Death sorrow is a powerful living pattern. To understand how all patterns are living and therefore all things are living, we take a closer look at what we mean by the words death and dead. Dead is the word we use in our attempt to describe types of movement and utility. When something is not moving in a way that utilizes the purpose of its design, we call it dead or obsolete. Using a toaster for an analogy, we can see this definition in action. When the toaster stops moving in a way that utilizes its design, making toast, we say the toaster has stopped working. We say it's broken, it's dead, and we cast it out and no longer use it. The toaster that no longer toasts is obsolete. It's the same with the human body. When the body no longer moves according to its designed purpose, we call it dead. The lifetime of the body is complete, and it will no longer be in use. This completes the life story the person was using the body to experience through. Here we find that the body is not the story, but was a vehicle for conveying and experiencing the story. Is the story dead? No. The story is complete. By watching the body, we see that it continues to move, but in a different way. It moves on a microscopic and vibrational level now. The microscopic movement of decay continues until all that remains of the physical body is a skeleton. And in the bones are the vibrational codes of the person's story and the genetic codes of the body that was used to live the story. In the stones that are our body's last remains are the messages of our human meanings and experiences. Since we're using the concept of death to describe the movement of something, it becomes clear that death is marking shifts between different kinds of movement and not the ending of movement altogether. There's no such thing as no movement. Everything that is happening in action and motion, in simultaneous and sequenced movement. Awareness is the basic movement of existence. Awareness is the movement of life and therefore the action of living. What we've been calling death has actually been change in utility and movement. Dead equals non-usability, not annihilation or ending of personal awareness. Personal awareness has no limits and therefore no end. Life has no end. Everything is alive always. This includes us and every living pattern that exists. Species sphere, it doesn't matter how strong, smart, or powerful you feel when it comes to species sphere. If you are living and breathing, you are directly influenced by it and can know for certainty that so is everyone else. This is why it is vital to change our relationship with fear. We are directly influenced by each other as humans, and it is a win-win scenario to personally make friends with fear, because what we do as individuals directly affects the whole of humanity. When we take the big picture view of our dominant use of fear in approaching life, we see clearly how we have been approaching death with that same dominating expression. We've been approaching death with fear, and that has generated painful meanings, and we've experienced our natural endings with a great and vast sorrow that spans the known history of the human we. This burden of sorrow has weighed heavy on our collective heart, and we are dying from the very overindulgence I spoke of earlier. It will be our end if we don't shift out of sorrow and suffering and mature into the great surfers of reality that we know deep down inside we truly are. It's our generation's great call and challenge to find the peaceful and loving meanings of unity and to now live these meanings out of our own free choice. We can begin by acknowledging that as a species, we form a single organism called the human we. We are all human. Our shared fears can only bring our ruin if we don't acknowledge them and refuse to shift out altogether. In our personal lives, our fears are reflected to us in our reactions to the world around us. Since our reactions are basically actions, they are creative, and our fears manifest in our physical environments. So, we can use our reactions and the state of our physical environment as mirrors to reflect back to us the nature of our fears. We can use this same logical pathway to identify the fears of the human we as a whole, the species fears. Why is it important to identify species fear? Because it is part of the psychological and physical environments we inhabit, and we are deeply influenced by our surroundings. Our surroundings are our most dominant creations as far as influence is concerned. When we can see clearly how and what we are creating with fear, we can see the perceptions that are involved in perpetuating fear. This shows us directly the structure of the fear. And what does that give us? It gives us the information to deconstruct the perceptions, the views we are holding that we are using to personally and collectively express fear. This is why the sages have said to embrace fear and seek its gifts. Its greatest gift is in revealing itself, revealing its design and nature. It does this readily, and in so doing reveals to us how to liberate ourselves from using it as an expression. The following are what I've been able to identify as dominant species fears through observation. Fears that are dominating the big picture view of the human we. Fear of loss. Our fear of loss is directly reflected in our levels of attachment. Attachment to ideals breeds moral judgment, warped expectations, and fear of loss. Moral judgment occurs when we use our beliefs, the ideas we're most attached to gauge the rightness or wrongness of others and ourselves. Warped expectation is a fixation on a single outcome and the overreactive sense of needing that particular outcome. And fear of loss stems from the ideal that holding possession. This warped view of holding is a direct expression of attachment. When we hold a flower, a thought, or a point of view, we are simply associating. Our attachment view comes out when we use this association to pretend that we actually possess anything. We say things like my thoughts, my beliefs, my flower thing, my person, my land, my opinion, etc. The expressions of attachment are endless. The main point here is that it is all pretend. It's yet another cruel trick we play on ourselves, pretending that we own people, places, and things. The truth is, we interact with people, places, and things through associating. To believe for 5 seconds that a person, place, or thing is under my total command and control, ownership, is ridiculous. All we own in this world, or any other, is our capacity to create. That is our own individuality expressed through our personal freedom to choose any perspective. There is no end to perspective. This gives us unlimited creative power. Do you really need to own anything when you already possess the infinite creative power of personal freedom? Fear of change. Fear of change is directly reflected in our beliefs about control. This fear creates some of the worst warped views we currently inhabit on the earth plane. We demonstrate collectively that we believe in authority, precision, predictability, and control. Through the precise predictability of outcomes, we gain information as to how things work on a detailed level. We translate this knowledge of detailed workings into authority. We say someone is in authority when they know a lot of details about something. That wouldn't pose too much of a problem if authority just meant a go-to person, a human resource. But through the warpage of attachment to precision and predictability, we see the authority as one who is supreme to others and in control. It only gets more twisted because it's such a lopsided view in the first place. We want to believe in control, because if we or someone else can control things, then we can keep things the same and not have to face the facts of change. To us, change means difference, and difference causes us to not be able to rely on predictability. We are afraid of not knowing how to be in a new situation, so we duck our heads in the sand. We deny a lot of what is really very predictable, and we deny the unpredictability altogether. This is a narrow and lopsided view and creates an irrational anxiety about the unknown. You know, mystery doesn't stop happening just because we mostly pretend it's not there. Fearing difference does not mean difference is not happening. Difference is happening all the time. It's where we live, and to be afraid of where you live is a miserable state. We live in change because change is motion, and we live in constant motion. The level and degree to which we fear change is directly reflected in how much we rely on the illusion of control. There is no control, really. Quantum physics has revealed that. There is only degrees of influence through association. Fear of lack. Fear of lack is directly reflected in the destitution of the poor on our earth and the greed of the affluent. Are there poor and destitute among us? Is there not a whole, huge, vital part of the human we that is starving, drinking poison water, living in deprivation, and the massive insecurity all of that creates? And now, more than any other time in our history, there is a huge discrepancy between the standard of living for the poor and the affluent that is obvious to most of us. By now, we are all seeing it. And what do we see many of the most prosperous of the planet do? We see them fall under the spell of avarice and greed. We see them squandering resources, placing all of their confidence in ownership, and we witness their compelling addictions to having more, when they already have access to more than they could ever personally use in 1,000 lifetimes. This is the greatest and most observable imbalance in the shared PST of the human we, and thus one of the most powerful components of species fear. The truth is, there is no real gap between the rich and the poor. There is only imbalance in the whole species of the human we. Deep down, the rich fear poverty, and it is reflected in their behavior. You see, the rich fall into greed as a result of poverty, because we are all directly and inevitably connected. Thus, as long as the possibility of destitution exists for any human, the rich will fear the possibility of becoming poor. As long as any part of the human we is starving and impoverished, there will exist and propagate a species fear of lack, affecting us all, no matter how much we acquire. Ultimately, we will eradicate poverty, and with it the fear of lack, or vice versa. In the meantime, it's up to us to acknowledge this fear and the warpage it creates. There is no lack except for what we're creating through our collective belief. By recognizing all the patterns generated with fear, we can deconstruct these fears on a personal level, clear our vision, and set a new course. The upside of our existence as a whole species is that if I eliminate these fearful expressions in my creations, it is in effect happening to the whole human we. When we shift our personal perspective, we are shifting the perspective of the whole. That is the creative power of unity. Fear of ending. Fear of ending is the fear of death and finality. Like all other species' fears, this fear is reflected in the misunderstandings we're having about death, confusing death with annihilation and utter destruction. It's paradoxical that we live every moment of our life right next to death, and yet it remains one of the greatest mysteries of life to the human we. We also demonstrate that we experience finality and endings as a form of suffering and something to be escaped and grieved when not escaped. We act as if death is the ending to life, even though we clearly see that life itself really has no end. Again, this fear is based on misunderstandings and the widespread illusions about death. The death of the body marks the completion of the life story of which that body is a physical center. We are all living out our personal life story. Each story has its own individual beginning and will follow its path to completion. Death is where the beginning and the end of our stories meet, making our life story finished, whole, and complete. The beginning is where the end starts, and the end is where the beginning finishes. In reality, we are ending from the moment we start, and our final moment has in it all of our story from the very beginning. We are ending all the time. Each moment that comes and goes is the ending of a previous moment. Each new phase or chapter of our life marks the ending of the previous chapter. Each beginning is an ending place as well, or else it wouldn't be a beginning. When we see this beginning-ending relationship, we see that we are always dying and rebirthing. This is the flow of life. This is the fact of our daily existing. When we can grasp this meaning, we will know how to respond to death and endings with grace and a peaceful heart. The momentum shock of a story completing is so immense that it can knock us off our feet, bring us to our knees, and cause us to have to lie down. This is our body letting us know that when a story ends, it is time to repose and reflect. It is time to review the story and admire it as we instinctively know to do with finished works of art. These stories, they are the art of life and living. When we come to the end of a story, it is the natural signal to be still with it, to look at it again and again, to appreciate the details, and to personally celebrate the story and our own creations as a whole. It is not quite so frightening when you understand that annihilation is an illusion, and that death, far from annihilation, is the partner of birth. Death always marks a new beginning. Now ask yourself, do I want to fear life? Do I want to fear my own existence? Do I want to fear completion of my personal projects? Do I want to pretend to own people, places, or things? Do I want to fear motion, to fear change? Do I want to perpetuate poverty by pretending there is not enough? Do I want to create any part of my life with the expressions of fear? Fear of making mistakes. One of the greatest causes of anxiety in our lives is the mishandling of mistakes. Mistakes are learning tools and are so friendly and efficient when used correctly, because making mistakes has been overblown into sinning against God and so forth. We've created a neurotic auto-reaction to the very possibility of making a mistake. Our auto-reactions to making mistakes compound stress in our bodies and especially wreak havoc on the personal mind space. We overreact with guilt, shame, and self-hate. We distract ourselves with these reactions from the mistake and the information it holds for us. The reactions of guilt, shame, and self-hate are the self-punishing, so to focus on them is to focus on self-punishment. And this takes our attention away from the vital information held within the mistake itself. It is kinder and more efficient to look at our mistake with the full intent to learn, to allow our misunderstandings to point us in a direction of what we need to know more information about, to let mistakes that create regret be a signal that we have gone against our own design somehow. Mistakes can be the fastest way to learn because they usually stand out pretty good. It can be far more subtle and obscure how things are working when we're succeeding and flowing. The standing out obviousness of mistakes makes them easy to see. Mistakes are kind and gentle directors when they are heeded and not used as weapons to punish ourselves or others with. We are going to have to adjust. I've lost my place. Mistakes are kind and gentle directors when they are heeded and not used as weapons to punish ourselves or others with. We are going to have to adjust to a better relationship with making mistakes because the stressed out overreactions we are having are killing us, killing our sense of creative freedom and killing our bodies with the stress sickness that comes from overreacting. When we put fear aside as a personal expression, we will come to a better relationship with our learning tools and processes. When we begin our peaceful approach to learning and our own nature, we will be approaching life with honor. Honor. To honor is to approach with dignity, clarity, and understanding. To approach with dignity is to perceive with a sense of equality, to feel equal to whatever pattern we're looking at. To have clarity is to hold no prejudice. This requires the highest degree of honesty with self. And we must understand or have a basic comprehension of the design that we're looking at, what it's like and how it works. This is the design of honor. And to use honor as a personal approach is to experience dignity, clarity, and understanding. To walk the talk is to experience the talk firsthand. When we are not honoring our own patterns as free creators, we are not honoring our infinite nature, and we are not acknowledging our equality. When we don't honor our true design, we exist in conflict with our own pattern and literally tear ourselves apart. This tearing apart triggers the experience of sorrow. The pain of the heart and soul comes from not living the purpose of freedom, which is the capacity to choose, and in choosing, create. We have the innate capacity to choose to create paradise here on earth by honoring our infinite nature and creating in peace and balance. We are free to make that our story here and live that quality of life. In doing this, we raise the quality of life for ourselves and at the same instant for the whole world. Honor your life. Honor your true identity as a free creator and honor the designs you use to experience your life. Approach peace, freedom, and love with dignity. Know that you are not above or below, but equal to the great and mysterious story that is life. Be honest with yourself, and life will be honest with you. Be clear with life, and it will be clear to you. Come to understand more about your own self, more about peace, and more about love. In this, you will come to understand more about life, and in turn, live a life story that honors life. This is how we honor our life. Farewell, my friends. There's a game I play in my imagination called It's a Good Day to Die. Sometimes every day or for weeks in a row, I will create my own death. Excuse me. For some reason, I have a tendency to have a jetliner crash into my house or my car or wherever I am. I play this out in my mind and tell myself that this is the end of the story. I cannot add or take away one thing in my story. It is complete. Then I allow myself to travel in mind to my own life review. I picture beautiful surroundings and see who is there to witness and review with me my finished life story. I'm often surprised at who shows up at my reviews. Jesus is almost always there. Usually there will be someone very close by whom I'm speaking with, and that person will ask me questions about my life like, what was the most important thing you found out about life? What priority did you create with? What was the most beautiful aspect of life you experienced? I look over my whole life with no particular agenda, just to spontaneously see different aspects of my story and what I can learn from them. I have had great moments of clarity, understanding, illumination, and most of all, appreciation. I urge you to die today, meaning play this imaginary game. Pick a way to go and totally envision it. Tell yourself at the right moment, and you'll know when, that it's my friend, it's finished. Then imagine yourself sitting with your family and friends in a beautiful, timeless place and review your life. Commune with your guides and teachers and come to see what you have come so far to see. Look upon your life with eyes of love, and until the next time we meet, farewell. More than this, relax, surf the waves of your life with skill and grace, and fare excellent, my friends. Peace to you here and in the all awake. And thus ends Life Designs by Professor Max Trinity. And it was a very, very good book. I enjoyed reading it, and I hope that you enjoyed hearing it. I find every word of it to be so true. And I know I'll do a lot of reflecting on some of the things that were discussed in this. And any comments or ideas that you have that you would like to put in the comment section, feel free to do so. This is the Dove Lady, over and out for now. Bye-bye.